Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Belgian Football Podcast. My name is Ben Jackson. I'll be your host, and as always, I'm joined by Scott and Joris. Scott and Joris, how are you guys doing this evening?
Hello, everybody. I hope we're all well.
Fantastic weather the last few days. Yeah, let's have a weather chat here, right? That's as exciting as it gets. And who knows? Maybe I'll even have a Bundesliga team in my city again. Who knows? But that's
Who knows?
also not part of this podcast.
It's fine. We can bring in all these other influences as well. I mean, down here on the coast in Sussex, it's been a beautiful day in the sun. If you were in Brighton, you saw a beer Scotch shirt today. That's probably me because I doubt there's anyone else in Brighton wearing a beer Scotch shirt. Nice bright yellow one. Anyway, let's get on to the football. We'll do what we did last time. We won't reveal the results. We'll speak of them as they go through. We'll start the big one, which was the title decider, though we kind of thought it had been decided last week, which was Antwerp against Club Brugge. Going into this, the Antwerp fans had tried to rally the team, being like, they do not win the title on our patch. There was also a little bit of stuff coming out about how they won't win the title on our patch because we won't let the game finish. The game did finish and we were fine in that sense, so nothing to worry about there. However, Antwerp did strike first in this game, and it was that man Mikkel Fry back in the starting lineup, back amongst the goals. Worked it quite nicely, actually. He was a bit isolated on the wing initially. Worked it inside to Samata. Samata laid it back off to him and he put it into the far corner. Mignolet could have potentially done better. I mean, he had such a good game against Union, and then that save, you felt like maybe he did get a hand to it, maybe he could have done a little bit better. But at that point, you're thinking, okay, maybe, just maybe, Antwerp are going to do this because it's Club Brugge. They've got up for the game. They're going to give us a final day kind of title race thing. And they almost made it 2-0. Free kick from the right-hand side. Samata completely unmarked. Forced a really, really good save out of Simon Mignolet. So we go into half-time. It's 1-0 to Antwerp. And you're like, well, yeah, like I said, something could happen. However, pretty much straight after half-time, Club Brugge get a penalty. Don't think there's much argument about this one. Lang crosses after he's crossed. Sek just completely wipes him out. Then looks dumbfounded as to why the penalty's been called, and it's just like that. It's just the way it looked as well as a tackle. I know sometimes you can get away with it, but it was such an aggressive tackle that it was one of those ones where you're just not going to get away with it, no matter that he's played the ball and the cross has gone. Like you can maybe catch him a little bit and you'll get away with it, but not there. Up to Hans van Aken, he made it 1 goal apiece. And about 15 minutes later, it was 2-1. Set pieces, a little bit of a theme in this game for Antwerp. Ball comes in. Jack Hendry heads in Sobel's corner, makes it 2-1, much to the light of Hendry. And then 2 minutes later, it's basically all over. Another set piece. Goes to the back post. Saga Sadamian's there to tap it in. And that's how it finished. 3-1 to Club Brugge. They win the title as we predicted they would last week, and we didn't think Antwerp would put up much of a fight. However, they did for the first half and made it a little bit interesting. And yeah, congratulations to Club Brugge on winning the title. Remarkable playoff run that they've been on and kind of back end season run that they've been on to win this one. Antwerp, on the other hand, just sums up a disappointing playoffs, and it's just kind of looking forward now to next season for them and a big, big kind of job to make this team competitive given the amount of money that's been invested in it. Scott, I'll go to you first on this one. How did you find this game, and did you think it was kind of a game of two halves as the scoreline suggests?
Yeah, I did, funnily enough, actually. I just wonder what Antwerp actually do at half time. There's a real Jekyll and Hyde element to them sometimes with their performances, and this was another one. They were actually great in the first half. I thought Fry and Samata were fantastic. Really, really good. But yeah, what do they do actually at half time? Do they go and have a drink? You know what I mean? Do they have a nap? I mean, it's inexplicable sometimes the difference. I mean, I expected obviously Bruges to come out and be much better in the second half, which they were. Kind of stormed it in the end. I think 3 goals in what was it, 16 minutes or something like that, and it was all over pretty quickly. But the difference was kind of quite shocking. Prisk's changes again were a bit odd. A lot of like for like changes, which kind of seems strange as well. No plan B, let alone a plan C. So yeah, just kind of strange. And they've not had a great playoffs. And I think the thing I took away from it was that it just kind of flagged up kind of quite how far away they still are really from seriously challenging. They've done well to get a playoff one spot for the second successive year. That in itself should be considered an achievement. But when you look at how they've done last year and this year in their playoffs, I think there is still some way to go to try and close the gap to where they want to be. To seriously challenge right to the end, and they've obviously got a really big summer ahead of them. There will be a lot of recruitment. There'll be faces leaving. I would imagine quite a few coming in. One of them is extremely likely to be a new head coach. We might know more about that in the next few days. So I think there's going to be a big push on in the summer to make sure they go a bit closer next year.
Yeah, definitely. And well, they invested a lot this summer, and in the end, they end up they lose a place after all these investments, and that unfortunately for them, on top of actually also apart from the scoreboard, not improving in their football as well. So yeah, I think it's clear indeed Priske will go, whether that's entirely up to him or it's just also a bit too many expectations. I don't know, but yeah. Also in Europe, it was not a big success. It was okay. They managed to get into the group stages, but that's also where it all ended quite soon. In the cup, they lost against at that time still a second tier team, so that's also was also not nearly to be called a success. So yeah, on all three fronts, they did not manage to reach their goals. Maybe their first goal in the league they did, and in the end, they get a European ticket. That's probably the most they could get out of this. But I think they're in there. Well, based on everything that happened throughout the whole season, in the playoffs, they're in their rightful place, and whether they should have been in the playoffs already, like that's maybe even already a bit in a bit too much that they didn't they might not have deserved that spot even, but well, so that they end up last there. Given their season, it's not really a surprise. Congratulations to Club Brugge indeed for a third consecutive title, of course, and yeah, that despite Antwerp playing their best half of these playoffs, yeah, indeed, but indeed they did not manage to pull through in the second half either. Maybe started with the stupid foul really from Sick. Yeah, all in all, he's a good defender, but that in defense they are struggling. This either it's Desolé giving away goals, then it's Sick that gets some red cards, um, or makes stupid fouls like this. Even though he's in general an okay defender, but like at these big moments, the light goes out too often. And I do think indeed that's also what they need to improve on still, to keep their calm in these big games for the to really challenge for the title. And yeah, of course are indeed big changes coming up for them. Yeah, that I guess that's everything I have to say about this about the game. Yeah, okay. Also remarkable, and not at the same time. Club Brugge didn't really create much, but they scored 3 times. They on set pieces, so it is a quality, of course, and efficiency is a quality as well. And that's what has won them the title. I believe they have also, not surprisingly, then the most goals on set pieces as well. Yeah, definitely something to look at for any team in the world. If you didn't do that at the moment yet, it's not that this is really news for teams, but it really is a difference maker, and it definitely did in this specific game and throughout the season for Club Brugge.
Yeah, no, definitely agree with all of that, especially the defending the Antwerp kind of situation at centre back. Like, people who've listened to this podcast will know I'm a big Abdoulaye Seck fan. He is like one of my favourite players in the league, but he does have those moments where he does just do something. You're like, what are you doing, mate? Like, you're better than this. And then Desailly there, like, he just hasn't looked massively comfortable. And I think there was that period, wasn't it, where they had Seck and Engels out, and I just didn't think Almeida and Desailly were the best kind of centre back pairing. So it's going to be interesting to see. Obviously, they want to get someone like Engels back. He's been injured for feels like decades now, but it's probably not that long. But yeah, it's interesting because there's some players there. You're like, there's the makings of a team, but I don't think it's not gelled, has it? It's not come together as a collective like you see with the Union, like you see with the Club Brugge, where there's complementary pieces there. I think there's just like the midfield is not always really complementary. Like the defense, like we've just said, isn't really complementary. The fullbacks as wing backs, it's like, is that their best role going forward? Like, will they create enough going forward in that position compared to some of the other teams that play a similar formation? So I guess as much as we don't agree with the appointment, that is something you'd expect someone like a Mark Overmars to be able to look at, identify, and fix. That's what he's done. What he was at Ajax very, very well is kind of that recruitment and what they've done, what they did there. So that's kind of, I guess, what their expectations are and why they've probably thought we'll just try and weather this storm in terms of backlash. And it seems to have worked, doesn't it? I mean, he's still there, so that's kind of his big job in the summer. Do you guys have anything more to add on this one before we move on? I feel like we kind of spoke a lot about who was going to win the title last week, so I don't really feel like we've got much else to say on
Well,
this.
it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think you're right, Ben. I'm not sure there's too much we can add, but it's interesting that Club Brugge's president Bart Verheigen had plenty to say afterwards with some rather, I suppose you could call them controversial comments. I personally referred to them as embarrassing when I was talking about them after I'd heard them, because I thought they were pretty embarrassing and rather strange at the same time, particularly coming so soon after your own side has clinched their third title in a row, their fifth in 7 years. You would expect Bart to be out celebrating rather than saying silly things to the media. What did you guys make of that?
Yeah, just like I even understand the underlying thing, but the way it came out was very clumsy and just not the right time or moment for that. So, yeah, the underlying point. Well, I don't want to spend too much time on it actually either, because the timing and the communication was clumsy and wrong. And put these words in the right order, and you'll make a good sentence.
Yeah, for those that didn't know, it was around the lines of we were playing against Brighton or something. He basically said like Union were Brighton, which is just like it just really wound me up a little bit. I mean, obviously we've had, and maybe we're a little bit biased, I don't know, but we've had Alex on from USG, and he's spoken to us about the connection between the two clubs and kind of what it is. So I guess maybe we are biased in the sense that we've spoken to him, and that's our understanding of it is what he tells us, because obviously he's there and he's doing it and he's running it. So we've spoken to we know of other clubs like Circle of Bruges we spoke about with the Monaco link and how that's completely different to the Brighton link. Yeah, I do get it about kind of like secondary ownership and all that sort of stuff. I saw someone tweet like something about when Club Brugge beat Lommel in December in the cup, he's going to come out and say we just beat Manchester City or some nonsense like that. But I don't know. It just really wound me up because it's like, come on, man, like you're not a small fry. Do you know what I mean? Like you're not the underdog in this situation. Like Club Brugge over the last 3 years have been the most successful team in Belgium. They've spent their money on players, like they've invested in good players. They have a good team. They're a big club within the league. Like you're not the minnows in this situation. You are better on paper than Union. Union have literally just come up. Like give them a little bit of respect, like some of your players actually did. Like Simon Mignolet came out and gave them some respect and then celebrate the title. Like, just celebrate the title. You literally, like you guys said, Scott, you literally don't have to say anything. Like, just go and celebrate. Tell it to your mates or something. Like, don't come out and spout kind of this
Yeah.
nonsensical stuff
Did,
that just doesn't. It leaves a sour taste. I felt personally like it was kind of like a, because everyone wanted Union to win, it irked him a little bit. So he felt like he had to be like, well, actually, we're the good guys in this, but no one's the good guy or the bad guy. It's just football at the end of the day. Like people wanted Union to win because of the story and like because Club Brugge have won the last two titles. Like people sometimes want something new. Congratulations, you've stopped that story happening through the playoffs. Just go and celebrate. Be humble about it. They pushed you all the way. Your players have admitted that. Like lots of people have said, this has been the hardest one of the three so far. Respect them, I think, is kind of my thing. Like you can go about it in so many different ways, and if that is your opinion, just keep it to yourself.
yeah.
Also, like like he compared them a few years ago. What was it? With he said something about West Ham and Southampton. Like they beat player. I think it was more about like players don't necessarily need to go there because like that's not a higher level than we are. So it should also not be. Well, they should be able to beat Brighton as well. Then
Yeah.
no.
I thought,
But they should, yeah.
I know that's sidetracking though, and a bit off the point that
Yeah.
he's trying to make. But that's already how clumsy his communication was as well for
I
that point.
rather enjoyed guys Felix Mazu's comments. He was asked about what he thought of what Bert Verheigen said, and he said, "Well, everyone's entitled to their opinion." He says, "But he says I'm delighted to have finished second in the Premier League."
Love it. Humorous to the end. That's what we like. Anyway, let's move on to the Brussels derby then, which unfortunately after that game meant there was kind of nothing but bragging rights really riding on it. However, Union did come out winners in this one. It felt quite nice that they did that after the struggles of the last couple of weeks. It felt like, okay, we can relax a little bit more. Harry Matoma, the Brighton man, gave them the 1-0 lead. And then Dennis Undav, the future Brighton man. I mean, maybe he's right. Maybe they are just Brighton in disguise. I'm sure Brighton fans would have watched that goal and hoped for the same. Although if they're the same club, I doubt you'd spend 7 million on this one player. Anyway, we'll move on from this because it's just boring now. Dennis Undav made it to the 49th minute, and then Murillo got himself sent off in the 87th. 2-0 win for Union. Disappointing for Anderlecht, only one shot on target at home. Union with only 37% possession, but more shots on target, and in the end, more goals. Fans clearly weren't unhappy about losing the league. They had a great time in this one, and Scott, I guess, it was nice to see them get back on the winning ways and kind of finish this season a little bit of high after the kind of disappointment, maybe more on our behalf of them than for them themselves as a club and fans over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I think it was nice for them to kind of go out and put on a performance for everybody, mainly for their own fans, I think. I think there was the obvious worry of how they're going to respond to what happened earlier in the day. This was always going to be a big game, I think, regardless of the circumstances, just because it's a Brussels derby and it's because of the season that Union have had. You know, the derby's had kind of more excitement about it than it's had in a long time, actually. Particularly with the top side in Brussels now being actually Union. I don't think anyone can dispute that they are the top side in Brussels football at the moment. I think even Anderlecht fans would concede that is the case. Not historically, perhaps, but I think in footballing terms in the landscape at the moment, I think they've proven that they are the main side in Brussels. We'll see what happens next season. But yeah, I mean, I was expecting Union to put in a good performance again, but I did think they might lose this game, so I don't mind being wrong about this, and was delighted to be proved wrong and to see that actually Union are very much Anderlecht's kryptonite, as I was saying as well. Just yesterday on social media, first time a side's beaten Anderlecht 4 times in one season as well, so that's an interesting stat in itself. And they certainly wouldn't want it to be against their Brussels rivals. I know some people would argue that Club are their real rivals, but that's a different sort of rivalry, to be honest. Yeah, it was nice to see them go out there and put in a performance, I think. And also what it underlined, actually, is that the way Union have played this season hasn't been a flash in the pan. It isn't a case of, the title had gone and, it all just petered out after that. They've gone out and put in another good performance, and this time they converted some of the chances that have eluded them in recent weeks, the ones that have ultimately hurt them. So that's nice, because it means that nobody can criticise them of kind of falling flat after it's all officially gone. They've gone out there and been very professional about it. Right to the end, and put in another performance against a top side technically as well. And I don't know what it is, just Anderlecht cannot get a grip of Mazu's Union at all. They've barely laid a glove on them at any point in the 4 encounters at all this season, and Vincent Kompany has just not found a tactical recipe to disrupt Union's style, even though, we've all been very aware of what that is kind of all season. So I find that interesting in itself, you know what I mean, that, you can have 4 attempts at it and not really get any closer with any of them.
It doesn't help if your player suddenly starts showing up on the pitch after 10 minutes or go in basically every game. So that's the main thing, I think. Also, I do think indeed the playing style from Union really particularly doesn't suit Anderlecht. So yeah, that's shown as well in these results. But yeah, that's like again they go behind after 2 minutes. They went behind after 2 minutes in the away fixture in the playoffs as well, and also quite soon, a bit later, but in the home game from Union, so at the Dudenpark in the league as well. And I don't remember, but the first game of the season they also lost anyway, and they conceded 3. But I don't remember if these goals came as quickly as well. Either way, in at least 3 of the 4 games, they were behind for, well, basically from the start, and it's difficult to recover from going behind against a side like Union, as everyone knows by now, of course. So yeah, I think Company is indeed still really. I think he must be completely mad for this defense as well. Also with Murillo, like third red card of the season, I think, straight red card, I think, and I think he also had another, just accumulating of yellow cards suspension as well. So like the talking about the lights going out, that also happens too often with him. Although like in between he had some good spells as well, but he seems like a player like either he's really good or he's really bad, and it just because it's not only because of the red card. The red card, of course, is an extra that doesn't show well, but like he was having a poor game. There's no middle ground. I'll just too many highs and lows, like no consistency in there, and yeah, that's definitely something he needs to particularly work on, and that hurt Anderlecht as well at times during the season.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we even saw it in the first game between these two in the playoffs, didn't we? Where he was just like on the edge against Undav a lot. Like they were proper going at it without really going at it. And it was like, if one of you's going to do something stupid to get yourself sent off, it didn't happen. But like, I know what you mean with him. Like he does just like, he's either so good and you're like, wow, this guy's fantastic. And like when you've got him doing that on the right and then Gomez doing that on the left with kind of the two slightly further forward wingers tucking in, like they're so dynamic and great. But if he's not playing great, it's just like everything's kind of misbalanced in that side. Yeah, I guess for Anderlecht, yeah, they just came up against their kryptonite in terms of manager and club at the moment, with Mazu just being able to outwork Company in that sense. And I think it's something you'd expect Company over the summer to go away and kind of look at why that happened so many times. Like, what was it that he didn't adjust during the game to do that? I mean, he wasn't able to bring on Benito Ramon for Just Xerxes. He hasn't been able to do that for a couple of weeks. Maybe that had an effect on him. I don't know, but it'll be interesting with them going forward because there's those rumours circling around Van Klombrugge as well, who's been fantastic for them, but him maybe being off. So it looks like they've said they'll go with Bart Verbruggen if that does happen. So it'll be a young goalkeeper with a back four that centre back wise they've been struggling a little bit. Hannes Delcar's been back in there, so it's nice to see him back. But when he gets injured or Zina de Bast is injured, they've had a bit of a struggle there. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do, and if they lose a couple of the young players, like what they're going to do to replace them. But everywhere else on the pitch, they seem to have good cover and good kind of backup up and strikers as well. Obviously, we know the situation there, but it's kind of like centre backs and strikers is where they're struggling, but everywhere else there seems to be a little bit more cover and kind of talent, I guess you can say.
Yeah, and I don't think Raman would have made that much of a difference. He has 2 goals since the winter break. Also, his playing time has reduced, of course, but
No.
that didn't necessarily lead to more to a lesser level of Anderlecht, or also in points. I think they increased throughout the season as well. So.
Yeah, it's more that
No,
you're taking away
pointing that out.
Company's like core game plan. His like sub that he has to make in the 60th or the 70th minute. That's his thing. Like you're taking away his Raman sub.
Yeah, but that's one that's very one that's very criticized. So he needs to that was actually the perfect momentum to find
Yeah,
out what he actually should do.
exactly. But maybe he still hasn't worked that out. Like, how do you? He's just the Benito Raman. He's just looking at him on the bench, and he just can't see him. And he's like, "Oh, how do I adjust now?" Anyway, they go into the game against Club Brugge next week, and basically everything's decided in this group. There is a situation where it may look like Union are top again because of the way certain apps work. If the teams are level on points and goal difference, they factor that in. But let's just be very sure Club Brugge have won the league, no matter what this weird table may look like on whatever app you use at the end of the season. Like, Club Brugge have won the league, so be safe in the knowledge of that. Because I remember last year people were like, "Oh, like such and such has won the league." And we're like, "No, they haven't. Club Brugge have won the league. It's just that certain apps don't really understand how the table works." I mean, some people in this who follow this league don't understand how the table works, myself included sometimes. So yeah, not blaming them. Let's move to the second playoff, and again, I know I hate not going chronologically, but we'll start with the game that actually mattered in this one, which was Genk against Ghent. Going into it, if Genk won, they could put a lot of pressure on Ghent and maybe push for the top spot in playoff 2. However, it didn't happen. The Ghent machine rolls on. They got revenge for the first game of this playoffs, winning this one 2-0. Tarek Tisu Dali with the first goal after, I think it was Owusu won the ball back in the midfield from Bongonda, played it forward, ball played into Tisu Dali, who kind of fumbled his way past two defenders and then dribbled the ball past Van der Voort into the bottom corner. Second goal on the counter-attack. Really nice ball over the top, found Vadis Ojije Foy. His was a really nice finish. I don't know where the marking was for this one, for the second one especially. The first one as well was pretty poor defending. Joris, as it's Genk, we always go to you first. Were you kind of expecting this, or did you expect a little bit more from Genk? And has this game impacted anything on certain players you think actually we need to move on from X and Y going into the next season?
No, I don't think so. But yeah, of course, if no, this was a very, very disappointing game. There is a reason why the fans shouted "shame on you" so, after the game. I know it's an easy thing to do, but still, I also don't understand why this kind of behavior is criticized so much in the media as well, because the expectations, it's not just about this game, but expectations this season were way higher, and for once it looked like ambitions could really be going to, this was the season, and it didn't just not happen, because you can narrowly miss out on something, but they were just never in this season. And they recovered a little throughout, but not enough, which is not a surprise. And the defending in this game was just shambolic. You can't defend like that for both goals, really. First one, okay, Tissoudali still does a good job there as well, but even then it was made too easy for him to keep the ball in his possession, and so on. So for the rest, there was really not much in this game from the Genk side, unfortunately. So yeah, disappointing game in line with the rest of the season. And just very sad also for Pierre Denier, who the I don't like to throw around the word legend at any it is used too often, but he's the real Genk legend who had his last home game now in the staff, as staff. He's after this season he will not be in the club anymore. Than his last home game like this. He deserved a better, better goodbye from the players on the pitch, and it's very sad that this is now overshadowed by the last chance of getting to Europe really flying away and in the get going away. So that's very sad, but in line with the season, unfortunately. And let's hope they can honor him better on a different time as well. I know they are planning to do it in the. I'm sorry for going on this, but it's just a shame how the club is handling this goodbye as well. It's terrible, because they also want to plan the real goodbye on the fan day, I believe. So in the middle of July, when okay, it's good that that there's time, they make time for it, but it's not also the wrong time and place, because half of the fans will be on holidays and stuff still. So you shouldn't be doing that in preseason. But give a proper goodbye. For consequences further on, I think it could potentially, although I wouldn't overstate that with the Conference League qualifiers, but like it could potentially be more harmful for potential incoming transfers, for outgoings. I think there will be a lot of movement. There will be a lot of rebuilding in the squad, like at a lot of teams in the league. It looks like it's going to be it probably is just a look like now that it's going to be like an even busier summer than other summers have been across the whole league. But yeah, we will see how that goes. Yeah, and it's more, yeah, okay, for the club in general. They will lose a good European year, and they are not going to be able to be replaced. But so the consequences will be lying further in the future. But for next season or transfers now, I don't think it will make that much of an impact as of yet.
Yeah, I think it's been a really strange season for Genk. Really, I mean, Joris is right that there's a sense where they've not really been at it at all at any point. Their home form has improved quite a bit under Stork, but he's not really been able to kind of sort of turn the ship in any meaningful way, which obviously means his position now is under.
I'll rephrase, by the way. Like, they haven't been in it since that loss in Eupen at the end of September or the beginning of October, because then they were still playing for first spot. That I remember, but who else
I think
does?
it's interesting though, because like when I look back in their season now, I think there's a feeling. I think that some of the key players there, I'm not sure they've wanted to be there this season. I think there's an element of some of them missed their big moves that didn't happen for whatever reason. And I can understand the club wanting to keep that squad together because, as you were saying, they went so close last year that, I think it was important. And we spoke about this at length pre-season, that it was important they kept the core of that squad together to give it another good go again because of how close they went last year. And I think some of them obviously were looking at a big move, and I think the shine just come off everything for them a bit, and that didn't happen. And some of them, sulky's maybe not the right word, but some of them just have looked really not that interested, I think, which is a shame because when you look at that squad, that is a squad that's packed with talent and technical ability, and if they could have played even close to the way they did last season, then they certainly would have finished in a kind of playoff one spot. So it's really unfortunate. I think you're right. I think there'll be a fair bit of change there as well. I think there's going to be a change of coach there as part of that, part of realigning everything there, as they kind of, I suppose, build from the ground up again. But as everyone knows, the club is in a good place financially and in an infrastructure sense. So it's really about the right appointments, I think, to start the season well again next year. Really, the thing that impressed me most about this game actually was the way that Genk were very, very professional about it. They've had a great playoffs. I thought, as you would expect, they would take their foot off things just a little bit, having won the cup and not having to win the playoffs to kind of guarantee their European football for next season. But actually, they've picked up where they left off. The consistency's been there, as have the performances, and I think that's been really, really great to see. That they haven't taken their foot off it. And Van Heisenbroek was a man of his word. He said, "We want to win the playoffs regardless." And he's made sure that they have, and I think that's been kind of quite impressive, really. And I take my hat off to him because I've been a little bit critical of him over the course of the season. Ghent are one of the sides who've actually had a much better season, I think, than any of us thought they were going to. Unlucky not to get a playoff one place, and probably are one of the sides that haven't quite got the credit that actually deserve. But I think that's more down to the style of football they play and the fact that it's perhaps not as sexy, if I can describe it that way, as we like to see our football sometimes. I know that's how I feel about them. But credit where it's due. They've had a great season and done a great job, even if the football hasn't been as easy in the eye as we would all have liked sometimes.
Yeah, no, I did want to touch on Ghent and just like you said, Scott. Yeah, they have had a good season. You think like cup winners, did well in the Conference League. Should have beaten PAOK. that really was a disappointment. But at the end of the day, at least they got through the group stages rather well and got into the knockout stages. And then this kind of playoff run has been really good. I do wonder though, like if we swapped them and Antwerp around, like would things have been different? The way Ghent were playing kind of to the back end, they were really in form, whereas Antwerp really weren't in form. Obviously, because they were up against, it was Anderlecht to them for that kind of final spot. We never really got to see that as a situation, but it would have been interesting to see those two switch around and whether it would have made playoff two really quite competitive if Antwerp had continued their kind of football decline that they've been having over the last couple of weeks. And then you have Ghent in playoff one on form. Like, would they have kind of upset a couple of those teams up there? It's all obviously hypothetical, and who knows what would have happened. But fair play to them. They've kind of, after the first game of this playoff where they just start getting everyone sent off, they've really knuckled down and beaten the teams in this playoff too and made it pretty not very entertaining and not very exciting at the end of the day in terms of intrigue before the matches and stuff. And we now go into this situation at the end of the playoffs with absolutely nothing to play for because they have been very professional, won the games that mattered. This one especially, this was the big one. They've won that, even though it didn't massively matter to them in that sense, in terms of like European football and stuff like that. But they managed to do it. I guess the question is, it's hard to then project them going forward because you think, well, Tisa Dali's probably going to go in the summer, and it's like it's kind of similar to last year. Like, how do they replace Yalemchuk? Now it's how do they replace Tisa Dali? Before that was how do they replace Jonathan David? It's like they're having this situation time and time again, and I still don't know what the answer is. If you know what I mean, like I can't see who in the squad because Yalemchuk obviously was already in the squad when David left. Tisa Dali was in the squad when Yalemchuk left. But who's in the squad now that you think is going to do that? Going to take that place and take that kind of goal scoring mantle?
Yeah.
Like, I can't really see it in the strikers that they've got now. I don't think any of those guys are ready for it.
I think there's an interesting point that you
Hmm.
make there about where they go next, Ben, because I think obviously we know that Van Heisenbroek is talking to the club about a new contract, and we know there's going to be a huge turnover in musical chairs over the next few weeks. That's the one certain thing we do know of, possibly more than we've ever seen in a summer before. So there could yet be a change at Ghent because of circumstances. And if rumours are to be believed, and I think there is something in this, Van Heisenbroek's one of his conditions is he wants to spend some money in the summer. And I think that's a really important point, which goes back to what you were saying. I think he recognises actually that there is nobody there who can step into that mantle and that they have to bring two or three in, particularly a new striker, I think, really. As part of a kind of tweaking, a longer term tweaking of that squad. And I think if he got any wind at all that they weren't prepared to give him some money to spend, I think he would consider going because I think he knows that the level they've set this season has actually been really, really good, and that they can't maintain that if they lose somebody like Tisa Dali. De Poitras signed a new contract and is an important player, but I don't think he can carry things on his own. That would be an unreasonable ask of him. So I think his condition to the club of, look, give me some resources to rework things here, and we can arguably do even better. I think is the right argument to put to them. It's just down to whether the club have the ambition to, modestly invest, you might say, and also keep the man who's kind of turned things around for them.
I hope to see Malik Fofana, very big talent as a striker in at Ghent, to have some appearances next season.
Mhm.
So actually, I kind of hope they don't do too much in that sense. Who knows? But yeah, that might be more for in the second squad that will be in the first amateur division. If I'm not mistaken,
Yep.
in Gent's case. So, but yeah, if he does well there, who knows how fast he might break through. Of course, it's always difficult to see how far players go at this age, but he just turned 17 or will turn 17 very soon. So it's early stages, but I hope to see a little bit of him at least next season. Yeah, we'll see about that. Indeed, Ghent is another club where things are still up in the air for both coach and squad.
Yeah, definitely. Or maybe someone like a Prevalyak or someone like that they could go look at. I don't know. We shall see what happens. One of their strikers who is off is Bio. the man who's been on loan at Charleroi and doing really well. Looks like they've exercised their option to buy on him, and you can't really blame them for that given the form he's shown. They went into the game at home against Mechelen with absolutely nothing to play for, neither did Mechelen. So they thought, you know what, we'll treat you guys to a 5-goal match. And it was kind of the forgotten man of Mechelen, another striker who got them the opening goal in this one. Gustav Engvall, the Swede, who's been injured a little bit and then very much a fringe player. He got a start in this one, and he definitely earned that start in this game. Herve Coffey with a bit of a clanger from a corner, just coming and completely missing it. I remember when I used to play in goal as a kid, my dad, that was the only thing my dad would say. He was like, if you come for a corner, you have to get it, because otherwise you're going to look stupid. And I'll never forgot that. So I just never came for corners, because I was like, well, I don't want to look stupid, so I'll just stand on my line. Yeah, he didn't. Clearly, Herv's dad didn't tell him that, because he missed it. Gustav Engvall tapped it in 1-0 to Mechelen. Then Kenan Kuba scored a very, very nice goal, picks it up on the right-hand side, dribbles inside, beats a couple of players, sticks it into the top corner with his left foot. Great to see him get that after that horrific own goal he scored the other week. It was nice to see him get one at the right end. And it's nice to see him getting more game time. It's clear that Still is trusting him a lot, and he looks like he's going to be someone for them next season, that's for sure. Then that man Bayo in the second half made it 2-1. Just absolute rocket header. He has got some neck muscles, that guy, and it was just a bullet header into the bottom corner. He then makes it 2-1 with a tap in after Morioka does most of the hard work. I think it was given offside initially, but then VAR overruled that one. So it was 3-1 to Charleroi. But then that man Engvall finished off a really nice counter-attack from Mechelen to get his second goal of the game. And I presume, Scott, you may know better than me, but I think that's probably his second goal of the season as well. I don't think he scored before this game. Mechelen dominated possession in this one, 59-41, but it was Charleroi who ran out 3-2 winners. Scott, do you see anything from Mr. Engvall that you thought actually he could be a useful player next season and maybe earn himself a little bit more game time? Or do you think maybe it was a case of put him in the shop window and maybe someone will come and snap him up?
Well, I think a player with the sort of experience that he's got. I mean, he's 26 now. You kind of peak of his career, roundabout now. I think they would want to try and hold on to him. Obviously, depends on who might be coming in, because we know now that Wouter Rankin's leaving. He did have a very good game, actually. He's not had much of a look in, really. Kind of at all. And it's interesting that a player in that situation can come in and be as motivated as that, and that just tells me that's quite a settled squad as well. That a player can come in from being a fringe player, effectively, and put in such a good performance. The playoffs have been kind of a playoff to forget for Mechelen, really. Haven't played badly. Kind of reminds me a little bit about what's happened to Union, actually. Decent performances, plenty of chances, not taking a lot of them. Games going against them on very fine margins. Things like that. So they are the Union of playoff 2 this year. I was saying last week I didn't think the fact that Rankin was leaving has played into this, and I still don't think it's been a big factor in the playoffs being disappointing for them, because the performances have been decent and they haven't completely crashed. Things have just kind of gone against them, which is a very different thing. The club's in a good place at the moment generally as well, which I think helps kind of the longer term cause. I didn't actually think they were going to finish bottom of this group, which I think is highly likely now, regardless of what happens in the final game. I thought they would do a bit better than they have done, but it's one of those. They've achieved their objectives as a club. I think so. I think they'll be happy, if not tinged with a bit of disappointment, with not being able to kind of put up a bit more of a fight in the playoffs. Charleroi, likewise, I think I expected them to do a little bit better. Bio, absolutely 11-19 for him now. I think that's what he's on. No brainer to pick up that purchase option, which I think is round about 1.5, 1.6 million euros, which is an absolute steal, considering what he's done. He's fit into their system very well, and he's been on record in saying that he did want to stay, so he's quite happy, I think. with his playing partners and the technical staff that Ed Still's put together. He seems very happy there. So keeping him is important because I think he came in on loan with the intention of being the main man, being the new Shamar Nicholson, if you like. And he's kind of picked up to a certain degree where he left off. He's done better than I thought he would actually, and I did think he had it in him to perform at this level. So I'm pleased on a personal note for him, having been a player I've seen in person kind of quite a few times during his time at Celtic.
Yeah, always difficult to judge because he also has shown in the playoff two, but playoff two is always it's an easier place to shine in a way than in the league. But even before he did definitely contribute well to Charleroi. So yeah, he also surprised me a bit, especially after a quite bad spell at Ghent in the first half of the season. So yeah, definitely a good pickup for Charleroi. They already. Yeah, not much to add, I guess. I didn't really watch this game. I did enjoy the highlights because indeed there were plenty of goals. You'll always see that in the in the games where there's nothing much to play for anymore. Teams are a bit more free and less put under pressure, and then sometimes you see amazing things. Not that really something amazing happened, but still a decent game, good goals in them. So definitely good. Interesting summer for Mechelen, another one of those teams where many changes might happen, and then a small rebuild might be in place. But yeah, that's again up in the air. Yeah, like in many teams. And in Charleroi, I think there's a bit. They seem in a good place. I guess they might not have that many changes. Although, if Sorgan would move on, which might happen, that's already a very important player for them. They might need to replace him, but even then, I think they have quite a good core. Even if one of the central defenders, or even if one of the central defenders would go, because they have been quite well as well. I'm always surprised when I see Andreu is only 19 still, and he's really had a good season under the radar a bit. But yeah, even if someone like that would go, I do think they have a good basis. They have a good fundaments for building for next season. But we'll definitely we'll be able to talk a bit more about that, about Charleroi and other teams in our bumper pre-season episode that we're still planning to have, like we did last year. But yeah, for now it looks like Charleroi is going out in a good place.
Yeah, definitely. I think they've got some really exciting young players, like you said with Andre, like only been 19, and Kuba, as we talked about, Wazinski as well, who played in this game. They've got good players, some good young players coming through. And I agree. Yeah, I think they are probably the more like settled side out of all of them that are in the playoffs in that sense, in terms of what's going to happen next season. Let's
now you'll see that 5 players.
Yeah, they'll all go. Manager's gonna go. Like, yeah, we've cursed them. Hopefully not. Hopefully it'll stay as it is, because I think they're building something really exciting there. Let's use this as a time to segue to talk about Mechelen. So we've kind of had this: is he? Isn't he? Is he? Isn't he? Going with Rankin. It now looks like he is gonna go. Scott, I guess, as kind of the guy with the soft spot for Mechelen, maybe you could give the listeners who have maybe only come into Belgian football this season, the year before, kind of like how big that is a thing for Mechelen, for Rankin to be leaving, like what he's kind of achieved there and why it's a big deal and a big kind of transition that's now going to be taking place there.
Well, Rankin's had 4 seasons at Mechelen, 4 very successful seasons actually. He's achieved a lot in those 4 years. I mean, that's the equivalent of, I think, his final match this weekend, the home match against Genk, where I'm sure he'll get a fantastic send off. Because the fans there are amongst some of the best across Belgian football. There's no doubt about it. They'll definitely give him a great send-off in his final home match, which I think will be his 145th as Mechelen manager. And in terms of his achievements, you have to remember that, Mechelen were, I suppose, in football in terms, on a bit of a downer when he arrived. You know what I mean? There was definitely a cloud around the club. He's tasked with bringing them back to 1A, which he achieved. You know, he achieved the promotion. He brought them back to the top flight. They won the Belgian Cup in 2019. They beat Ghent when they were still a 1B side. And perhaps more importantly than those two, although they're big in themselves, he's actually established Mechelen as a kind of top half side again, I think. Which longer term is much more significant because that's historically, you know, really what they've always been. So he's brought them back to, I think, longer term where they would like to be. And I think he feels personally, probably there's not much more he can do at the club. I think he's probably right about that. I think the challenge for them now is how do they push on again and potentially get closer to a playoff one place? That's obviously got to be something that they aspire to build towards and developing their infrastructure. I think to have achieved all those positives in successive seasons shows that the club have made a lot of progress under his leadership. And all of this has been done while playing a really attractive brand of attacking football. You know, they're a club who are known for that anyway historically, but the way that Rankin has had his side playing over the last 4 years is they've been a really good side to watch. Whether they're your team or not, they just play good attacking football. I think he's very good with young players, which is important at a club that prioritise being heavily embedded in their local community, like a lot of Belgian clubs do. As well, and prioritising developing young players as much as they can. They know financially they can't compete with some of the top sides in Belgium. That's always going to be a major aspect of their work, and he's always been very supportive of that. And he's also very big with his kind of team dynamic as a coach as well. He's not a coach who, you know, will appreciate an ego in a player or somebody who doesn't submit to kind of the team ethic. The team comes first. I remember much earlier in the season when Marianne Cheved was having a difficult time settling there, and was effectively kind of playing up a little bit, you would describe it, and he came out very publicly and said, look, we've told him he has to work harder in training and he has to work harder for the side, otherwise he's going to be no use here. You know, we like him, we want him here, but you know, the team comes first. And I think that underlines, I think, the real success to his coaching style. I think players enjoy working with him. You can tell that as well. He's a St Truden boy, incidentally. You know, he's from St Truden, who of course he played for in his playing days as well, and he nearly went back there. They were keen to take him back there not too long ago, and he just fancies a different challenge now, and that's what's going to happen. What we don't know yet is whether that challenge is going to be a step up in Belgium or whether he's going to go elsewhere, because he's very open-minded about this. And of course, when you're planning a step up and you're looking for different pressures to develop your own kind of coaching skills, then you don't necessarily have to do that in your own country with a top club. You can go and do that somewhere else. And I think the fact that he doesn't like really players with an ego, you know, he's not a coach who necessarily appreciates somebody who has huge technical ability and is prepared to cut them slack at the expense of the side because a player is so good. He's not about that and not interested in that. So it's going to be really interesting to see where he goes next, first of all. I hope he stays in Belgium because he's got a lot to offer a top club in Belgium, I think. But it'll be really interesting to see how he faces those challenges at a club if it is in Belgium, because, you know, it's going to be very difficult for him to balance managing egos at a top club. It's a very different thing to recipes had at Mechelen. So I think those are exactly the sort of challenges I think he's looking for. So good luck to him. I think he's a really bright young coach. He is still a young coach, really. I just reiterate, I hope he stays in Belgium because he's got a lot to offer Belgian football yet.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for that, Scott. And yeah, fingers crossed he does, because I just enjoy watching his teams play. I've enjoyed watching Mechelen play under him. Be interesting as well to see what players follow him out the door. I think that's kind of what we've been alluding to in terms of the kind of great uncertainty there. Like, will we see the likes of Nicolas Storm move on? Gaetan Kook as well in goal. That he's mentioned it before about moving on. So it's going to be interesting. Yeah, definitely going to be interesting to see where he ends up. It'd be nice if he does stay in Belgium. If not, we will definitely follow him closely in terms of how he gets on and stuff like that. But I can't imagine. I mean, we've spoke. Everyone kind of speaks about it. It's Antwerp that people are kind of feeling like he could just go there. But then you speak about the egos, and I think we know there's probably some egos in that dressing room that he'd have to manage, and it'd be interesting to see how he did manage that. So that could be an interesting one to see.
That's something that will happen at any top
Mm-hmm.
club, I do believe, though. So that's something he will definitely need to adjust to a bit. Also, I think he'll still stay in Belgium. He can still become the first manager that wins the league. Wins all leagues in Belgium, like until from 8th division down to the first. He's still the first year is the only one that's still missing. Also, he has won the cup, as Scott mentioned, so
Only
it's
one
really
left.
the only title missing in Belgium. And he could be the first one to ever manage that.
He's a football manager player, surely. That's why he's looking at that. So that's the sort of football manager like challenge you'd look at. That'd be quite a cool thing to go for. While we're speaking Mechelen, one man that was rumored to be linked, but I don't know personally. I didn't think it was the right job for him to go into. It wasn't Bailey, former Standard Liège manager. It looks like he's going to be the new head coach at Zulte Waregem, a side he played a lot of football for. Usually, when there's a new manager announced, we go over to Scott again for a deep dive, but we kind of know who Mbaile is because I think you probably did one when he was given the standard job as well. So if you want the full deep dive, maybe go back then. But Scott, you've been looking at his kind of Zulte time and like kind of the links between him and them. Why actually it's kind of, I guess because it's like a former player going. It is a former player going back, obviously, but it's more than just a former player. It's someone that was there during very successful periods for that club under Frankie Jury.
Yeah, it's funny. Joris was mentioning earlier that he doesn't really like the word legend because it's bandied around too much. But rather humorously, I'm just going to use it here because I suppose you could argue that Mbaile is a bit of a Zolta legend. He's certainly a Zolta hero at the very least. He's had 3 separate spells there, just under 190 appearances for the club. So he's a major figure in the history of a club that aren't that old as we know. Mbaile's name seems to have been linked with Zulte for what feels like years actually now. And his was the only name linked there that I thought really made any sense, I think. It's quite exciting to have him back in Belgian football because he had a very rough time at Standard during a point there, whereas we know it was very difficult for everybody. And I think his experience there, obviously he'll be better for it, but I think it's probably not a true reflection of his abilities either because of the situation he was working under there. So to go to another club that he's got a really, really close connection with, a club that he spent the majority of his playing career at. He obviously played for other clubs in Belgium as well. You know, he had decent spells at Lokeren and Eupen and Mouscron as well. And Ghent, he was at Ghent for a little bit of time, but Zulte are clearly, you know, where he spent the happiest years of his playing career. And of course, he was part of that side that almost won the title too. So there is a lot of affection for him as a figurehead, if you like, at Zulte. So in many ways, he was the obvious, if not the perfect candidate. The interesting thing is there's a huge recruitment job ahead of them, I think, this summer, which he will be aware of. He wouldn't be taking this job on without being aware of that or having had conversations about what he might like to do with the squad there. So he'll be working with the new recruitment team there because they've got a new recruitment team at Zulte very hard over the summer to get them into a place to kind of go again. So it'll be interesting to not only see the changes he makes tactically there, I think, but also to see some of Mbai's sartorial elegance because he was always very well dressed and it was always fun to see what he was going to be wearing each week, I think. So welcome back to Mbaile.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. I mean, it's going to be interesting the job he's got to do at Zulte Waregem. I mean, it's funny. I was looking at his stats as well, and that's the only place he ever scored double figures for seasons. Like I think he had 3 or 4 double figure seasons in terms of goals, and they were all when he was there. So yeah, it's gonna be. I'm really happy that he's back. I feel like the standard job was just hard. Like we saw Luca Elsner come in, a man with more managerial experience than Bailey, and he struggled as well. So it was a difficult job. And he also, let's not forget, he did get them to the cup final last season. Like he was part of that cup final run. He got them. He was the manager of them in the cup final. Like he's got that behind him, so he just needs to build some confidence through that. Think of the style of play he wants to play, get some players in that can play that style, or work out the players he's already got there. Because he's got Vossen and Gano up front, like he's got goals in the side, depending on whether they stay or not. It's just the defense he needs to sort out, and he'll know that he needs to sort that defense out. That'd be kind of his first kind of port of call. So yeah, we definitely wish him all the best. Like I think we need more people like Mbaye in the game for obvious reasons in terms of equality and diversity of managers, and you just have to hope that he is successful, because then it's the start of something and it can kind of spiral off the back of that, you'd hope. So yeah, good luck to him. His former club have been making moves as well. We now know that Standard Liège have a new sporting director in Fergal Harkin. I believe he was formerly at Manchester City, so he's no mug. He has been involved in the City group as well. He's got a massive job in his hand, hasn't he, guys, to kind of turn this around. But you're starting to see 777 putting things in place. Although I think, if I'm right, I think Joris reported this to us, that Genoa are going to stay with Alexander Blesson, so we can kind of move him off the list of potential managers there. So sporting directors in place, which I think is the right way around to do it. Get the sporting director in, and then get the manager in, and then you can get those two, kind of the synergy between the two working. But Scott, again, you're doing all the breakdowns today, but Harkin, what can you tell us about Harkin?
Well, I know a fair bit about Fergal Harkin, mainly because he nearly became the sporting director at my team, Celtic, a little bit over a year ago, but it never quite happened for various reasons, and he stayed at Manchester City in the end. He's been at Manchester City under the City Football Group since 2009. So a long time, and his first 3 or 4 years there, he headed up scouting for the City group. And I think round about 2013, he moved into a kind of key strategic role there, which is why he's really where he is today now, when he takes up a role which is called at no other club will you find a title like this, but I love it anyway: Football Pathways and Partnerships Manager, which is a very smart way of, I think, saying master networker on behalf of Manchester City. I think he's a very well respected and liked figure who knows his football, and I know he's played a key part in a number of teams appointing coaches out with the City Football Group. At my own team, Celtic, for example, he's actually he was very important in the appointment of Ronnie Dyler a number of years ago. Now, that's a name that will be ringing people's bells at the moment, because he has been mentioned as being one of the front-running figures to be the new head coach at Standard. So we'll see if anything happens with that, because obviously he's employed by the City Football Group at the moment as the head coach at New York City, who recently won the MLS title. So there's a lot in that story, I think. And he was also key in Ange Postecoglou, the current Celtic manager, going there as well. So people come to him and consult him a lot, both inside the City Football Group and outside. Really, really bright young sporting director, I think, who now is getting to step out on his own and rebuild a club that is pretty famous in its own right. Big task ahead of him. This being confirmed this evening, because it's only in the last couple of hours as we record this has been officially confirmed, although we've known for a few days. This is probably the beginning of a torrent, I suspect, of appointments and announcements at Standard. Expect a new head coach to follow probably within the next week or so, I think, probably next week or 10 days. And then after that, we're going to start to see the squad shaping change as well. So we're going to be talking a lot about Standard over the next few weeks, I think, guys.
Yeah, no, I think if they do go for someone like Ronnie Dyer, it'd be interesting, because obviously he was also after Celtic, wasn't he? He went to Vålerenga in Norway, which is obviously Aaron Donham's club, old club, now loan club. So obviously they've got a working relationship. I don't think our friends at the Nordic Football Podcast were too fond of Ronnie Dyer, if I remember rightly from a couple of episodes. I think Steve Wiss over there, or Meatman Soccer as he's known, I think I remember him talking about Ronnie Dyer and he wasn't too impressed. So hopefully he's learned a little bit more from his time with Alaranga if he does come to Standard Liège. But yeah, it's interesting times, I guess you could say, with Standard. I mean, don't want to get too excited about it, don't want to get too negative about it. I think we, or myself, I know, are kind of like what the fans are thinking in terms of like, let's just be a little bit patient and see what happens. Some fans, obviously, some other fans will be positive, some will be negative, but I think from some of the fans we've spoken to, they are a bit more like, let's just see what happens. Let's be patient and see what comes out of this. It's an interesting point. I wonder if you say with the City connections, obviously over at Lommel they've got the City connections. I wonder if Mike Green's going to get a little ring and be like, mate, who have you got at Lommel that we can take over to Standard Liège?
I think one of the key reasons 777 have gone for Fergal actually is, aside from being really bright and being absolutely right for a position like this, and this being the right opportunity to come along, I think he's got a huge network that he's been working with for a long time. So the size of Fergal Harkin's address book, purely because he was working with Citigroup and that entire network, I think is going to stand both him and Standard in really, really good stead, developing that squad and just bringing in players who probably they wouldn't be able to without that network. So I think the size of the network that he has now has been a key factor in this, no doubt about it.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that's kind of what they need to work around what they've got in terms of potential financial limitations, if they do have them, and kind of moving players on and all that sort of stuff. He can maybe get things moving in the right direction, which they really do need to happen. But I think that's probably everything for this week's episode. We had some news, which is always good. We don't always have news, so it's nice of the league to give us that. There's also the Pro League English website, English language website, which is launched. So yeah, you can check that out, and there'll be much more English content from them. Obviously, come to us first because we're going to give you the content as well. But it's nice to see the league engaging more with that side of it. It's been great for your French or Dutch speaking; you can get into it that way. But for us, some of us English speakers, it's been a little bit more difficult. So it's nice to see that kind of content being produced, and yeah, hopefully it will continue and improve as time goes on. Looking ahead, we've just got a load of dead rubbers really to finish off the season in the top league and the top playoff. We've got Union hosting Antwerp to round off their season. Club Brugge host Anderlecht to round off theirs. Mechelen host Genk on the Saturday evening, and Ghent play Charleroi at the same time, I believe. I'm not sure if I'm reading that correctly. It probably is the way it was scheduled beforehand, but not that any of that means anything to either of the sides in that sense. But yeah, pick and choose which one of those you want to watch. Hopefully, as Joris said, when there's nothing to play for, there's goals. So that's all we can ask for to round off the season. Anyway, guys, as always, a pleasure talking to you this evening.
Cheers for your ears, everybody, and see you soon.
Yes, and for Scott, I wish a Frankfurt victory tomorrow, as we record in the Europa League final.
Let's
No,
not go there.
A backlash from Rangers fans if we start doing that. Anyway, yeah, enjoy the European finals. Hope you enjoyed this episode of the podcast. As per usual, please do leave us a review or rating on your podcast app of choice. If you want to get in contact with us, feel free to on Twitter. It's at Belgian Foot Podcast. And you can also get in touch with us on Gmail as well. It's belgianfootpodcast@gmail.com. Thanks once again for listening, everyone, and we'll see you soon on another episode of the Belgian Football Podcast.